Welcome to CBR TV. My name's Steve Sunu. I am here at San Diego Comic-Con on the CBR Yacht, and sitting next to me are two extremely talented voice actors and the stars of Batman: Assault on Arkham. We have Mr. Kevin Conroy and Mr. Troy Baker.
Hey,
hello, gentlemen.
good to be here.
How are you guys?
Great. How you doing?
Excellent. Welcome to Comic-Con, and welcome to the CBR boat.
Great.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, it's
Nice
pretty
setup.
Right? It's good. So I'm always curious with two voice actors that come onto the CBR TV. Have you guys ever actually met in person before coming here?
Once.
One time, and it was very brief. It's actually because clearly, I mean, we're working with legends just across the board with a legendary character. Happy birthday, Batman!
Yes.
Yeah.
But this was one of my greatest moments where it was on Arkham City, and we were getting set up for the mics, and I was kind of on the other side of the room, and Kevin's in there, and he's getting a script all together, and I couldn't help myself. I said, I hate to do this, man, but he just kind of looks up like, here it comes. And I said, there was an episode of the animated series. He goes, yeah. I said, you probably don't remember it. It's a long time ago, but it was an episode where Bruce Wayne falls asleep and he wakes up. And he just looks up and he goes, for a chance to dream. I was like, yeah, he goes, it's my favorite episode too. And I did everything I could to contain myself. But yeah, so that was, and now we're on a boat together.
See? Everything comes full circle.
For Chance to Dream, indeed.
For Chance to Dream. Great show.
You know, you guys are Troy. You're reprising the role of the Joker for Assault on Arkham, and are you also doing it for Arkham Knight? Can we talk about that?
No.
No. Okay.
No talking about
we
that.
We can't talk about Arkham Knight at all. No talking about
Kevin.
Arkham Knight will not happen during this thing. So sorry, if you're here for Arkham Knight, you have to change channel. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
But so you guys are reprising your roles, and Kevin, obviously, this is a role that you reprised a number of times.
I've been playing this role for 23 years.
23 years throughout many
Just
different
incredible.
incarnations.
I mean, it's great. I mean, it's what an honor to be a part of something like that for 23 years. But to have created that sound when Batman the Animated Series was first being created was, to be a part of it with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and Andrea Romano. I mean, it was such a great creative crew. And it was an acting job. We didn't really know what it was going to become. No one knew it was going to go more than a season. And then it just grew and grew and grew and evolved into other shows, But you never know as an actor what's going to happen with something. But I remember just the first time I was sitting in a, you do the recordings first, and then everything goes off to the artists and they paint and it comes back. So there's a 6-month lag time in doing the TV shows between when you do the recording and when you see anything. And the first 6 months, we were just using our imaginations to create these things. We hadn't seen anything.
Wow.
So when the first footage came back, then it was being painted in Korea. I was sitting in this ADR studio at Warner Brothers, and these colors came, and this sound, this full symphony score, and these graphic, beautiful artwork. I said, I had no idea this is what I was doing. I had no idea this is what I was working on.
Oh my God.
It was awesome.
That sounds great. I mean, that I think is a lot of what initial viewers' impressions were like for the show. I mean, Troy, you mentioned you were a fan of the show when you first saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember rushing home from school every day, and back then, I would always be really mad. Like, they switched the time. It used to be 4, and then it was 4:30.
Right, I remember
Or it was
that.
4:30, then it was 4, so they moved it 30 minutes, so I couldn't get home from school fast enough. And so I would have to VCR, VHS record every episode. And, back then we didn't have IMDb, and these were just voices that you really never associated. There's actually a person to that. It's just, well, that's just what Batman sounds like.
Right.
And I remember, going through and watching the credits and being, okay, directed by Andrea Romano. Okay, remember that name. And then Kevin Conroy's Batman. Got it. And then, of course, seeing Mark Hamill, it's like, well, that's can't be the same Mark Hamill from Star Wars. So it was the first time for me to really be able to tangibly put a name and then a face with these people. And I was like, somebody actually, that's their job, is that they do this, and that's what I wanted to do.
It amazed me when people started recognizing me from the show and go, you're Kevin Conroy, you're Batman. I think, how do you know that?
Well, you maintained a lot of anonymity for a long time.
Well, I don't know who I am. How do they know who I am? I've never heard of me. I always say that to people. I say, I've never heard of me. How have you heard of me? But then with the internet, and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Everyone knows everything now. You just
Exactly.
Google it, and
Yeah.
you see everybody knows everything.
Well, you know, the internet I think is really interesting because it generates a lot of discussion about stuff like Batman, who is, you know, happy birthday Batman, like you guys said,
75.
75
Been
years.
good.
And we were just talking before the camera started rolling. We were talking about how the Arkham games and the Arkham universe, and certainly Assault on Arkham, feels a lot like a modern extension of what Bruce Timm and Paul Dini were doing on Batman the
Oh,
Animated
yeah.
Series.
Absolutely.
Well, what a great idea it was. Think about it. Batman never kills anybody.
Right.
He always takes people and puts them into Arkham Asylum.
Right.
So someone had this great idea. Wait a minute. There's this mental hospital that has the greatest villains ever written for comic books sitting in there waiting to be used.
Yeah.
So have Batman get in there, you know, and create this game where he's stuck in there. That was the first one. And it was a great idea to explore the world of Arkham. And you're right, it brings it all back from the animated series, and it's such a rich world that they can explore with that. The characters are so wonderful.
And especially, I mean, because we just got to watch this, watching Assault on Arkham, it feels so much, speaking of like a continuation, because of what the animated series, what that meant to, I mean, an entire generation of people. It really became very much of a definitive work for, because it was so representative of the comic books, especially of the time. It wasn't a reinterpretation of it, or even stylistically. It looked like you were watching the actual graphic novels. And it's funny because this Assault on Arkham, for me, as both like a comic book nerd and a fan of the animated series too, feels like it's like season 6 of that. Like it just fits right in line with it.
Well, dude, Troy, you keep you're a fan, obviously.
Yeah.
You remember watching the credits from the original and picking out the voice actors. You're voicing the Joker now.
Dude, it's not lost. I mean, first of all, Kevin Conroy will always be my Batman.
Sure.
And Mark Hamill will always be my Joker. It's just that's like
But
you
different
said.
actors bring different things to it.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting to see
Absolutely.
that.
And it's like, I was just talking to someone about this too. It's like, you know, you never really own a character. You're only a custodian of it.
Well, you're
for a
renting
while.
it, sort of.
Exactly. Because who's King Lear? Who's
Right.
Richard III? And
Right.
there's been thousands of people who played those roles.
Right.
But, you know, when like I read Arkham Asylum or The Killing Joke, you know, whatever, these were the voices that played through my head. And again, for that show and those characters and those roles and those actors specifically to be the progenitor for what led me into doing what I do, absolutely, there's a lot of honor and respect that goes in the fact that I'm even able to fill into that role. So yeah, it's huge.
I mean, working with Mark was so incredible for so many years. We had such a great symbiotic relationship. He fed me, I fed him. And I always thought, this is the definitive Joker.
Sure.
And then I saw Heath Ledger
Yeah.
in the film. And I thought, oh my God,
Right.
this is taking it to a whole different realm. And then I worked with Troy. And it's just watching other actors bring things to it. Everyone enriches it in their own way.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting to see how different actors have different but similar takes
Sure.
on the same character, because the characters is kind of a given.
Sure.
But it's watching different people approach it from their way. The actors, we are our tools. They always say that. You know, you are your instrument. And all you have is your imagination and your emotions that you bring to the character. So it's been great working with you to see what you bring to it.
Thanks.
But it must be a trip to have watched it as a kid.
Oh, God.
And to then be involved in that world as an adult.
And
That's pretty
specifically,
wild.
you know, like the Joker that I was brought in to do when we did Arkham Origins was clearly to point towards the same Arkham that we had seen in the Joker in the other Arkham games. So,
Right.
so I kind of had, fortunately, great rails to be on. And you know, if it had lived and died with one thing, that would have been fantastic. The fact that now you bring it into an animated setting too, which you know was the seedling for this love of mine. That's a huge banner day. And then on top of that, to be like, and by the way, I was like, I gotta know who's our Batman. I was like, oh, Kevin. I'm like, okay. You know, it's like, sure, let's do Cherry. You know.
Right.
So yeah, it's been amazing.
Kevin, you touched on something that I think is really interesting about voice actors, especially when you portray these characters. It can be a very big responsibility because you look at we look at the fans here at Comic-Con. There's so many people that love these characters and see you as their version of the character, certainly. And I know, Kevin, you know the power of the words, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman. I read a story somewhere that you actually worked relief for September 11th, and you said that line, and everybody went crazy. Like that seems
That
like
was
such a
great.
huge responsibility on your shoulders, both of you.
Well, it
Actually.
was so wild because I live in New York.
Sure.
Did you ever hear this story?
No.
I live in New York. Everyone's seen those pictures of everyone running from the buildings at Ground Zero. But what happened right after that was hundreds of people ran back.
Yeah.
And New York is that kind of city. Everyone wants to help. So I called, and they were organizing people at the Javits Center. And they said, well, we have all the diggers, we have all the relief workers we need. They said, do you have any, what we really need do you have any restaurant experience? I said, I'm an actor. Of course I have restaurant experience. Are you crazy?
How do you think
I said,
I've
what do
been
you
surviving?
need? I said, you need a waiter, you need a cook? They said, you cook? I said, yeah, I used to work in a restaurant, in a kitchen. They said, are you available? I said, I'm available right now. I'm between jobs. They said, no, we mean tonight for the night shift. Yeah. I said, yeah, I can be down there now. So I ended up doing the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. night shift in the Ground Zero kitchen for a couple of weeks. And the atmosphere down there was just, as you can imagine, very dark, very sulfurous. The air was very sulfurous, it was very smoky, and it was just a few blocks from the pit. And all the relief workers would come in all night. There was 24-hour work going on. So it was a 24-hour kitchen. So the night shift was a very, very quiet, somber kind of place where all you heard were the hum of generators and the work lights that were on the pit. And people would come in covered with dust, all these cops and firemen, and just legions of them all night long. So a few nights into this, and it was very sweaty. It was a very hot, sweaty September. I'm in the kitchen working with this guy, and he goes, so my day job is I'm an architect. What's your day job? And I said, oh, I'm an actor. He goes, yeah, but do you do some special kind of acting? I said, well, I do mostly voices now for animation. And he said, I knew it! He said, you're that Kevin Conroy, you're Batman. I said, how do you know that? He said, everybody knows who's Batman. I said, I don't think everyone knows who's Batman. He said, oh, can I tell the guys in the dining hall? I said, no one's gonna care. Are you kidding? He said, are you nuts? He said, listen. So he was out in the dining room and he goes, hey guys, you're not gonna believe who's been cooking your dinner. It's Batman. And there's this long silence and you hear, bull! And someone says, make it, prove it. You know, typical fireman.
Sure. Yeah.
So from the kitchen I do, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman! There's this long silence and you hear, holy crap, that is Batman! And the whole place bursts into a cheer.
Oh, that's so
And they come
great.
running back into the kitchen and then everyone just started laughing. And it was so much fun. And then the architect who'd recognized me said, what does it feel like to be Santa Claus? I said, because that's just what happened. People started laughing all of a sudden.
Wow.
So I emailed Andrea Romano that night as soon as I got home the next morning, and I said, what we do is not unimportant. It really matters.
Yeah.
That's what people needed at that moment, was to laugh, you know?
That's
my
such
Ground
an
Zero
incredible
story. Isn't that funny?
Wow.
But to be honest, I edited the words because the firemen used somewhat more colorful language.
A little bit.
Sure, I can understand that. New York's finest, man.
Yeah, exactly.
New York's finest. Troy, I did want to talk. I know that you're a musician. I hear.
Oh, really?
You're a musician,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, excellent.
And like I love music, and it definitely affects the way that I approach asking questions. I approach the way I
cool.
do my job. But I feel like because it's such a oral art, I was wondering if it actually affected the way that you approach voice acting.
You know, I think probably on some levels it does, and maybe even more. You know, maybe even subconsciously. I've always had a knack of true jack of all trades, master of none. But for some reason, I've always been able to I sucked at sports, and I just not very physically adept at all. But for some reason, music just kind of came naturally to me. It was something tangible, and I could pick up an instrument and play it.
Oh, that's great.
And so maybe that's like a core thing to where I can just adapt to different things, and when I hear something, I can emulate it. So that was definitely there, and it was I could sing, so that's definitely being able to use your voice in that way and learning the business end of a mic. And there's also, to me, there's always a rhythm and a pace to things. I mean, you look at Shakespeare, it's iambic pentameter, and that's where the power of the prose. That's where it sits, is in that rhythm. So maybe there's a little bit of that. I don't know, but I think everything is a song, and it's just either spoken or sung, and everything is music. It's just like what we do. There's like Batman. The entire thing is just this ballad. It's just the story of this guy, and everything that we've done has been a verse, and or like a wicked guitar solo.
Kevin, what about you? Was there anything that you did outside of acting that might have informed how you approached it?
Well, I sing as well. I love to sing. So Andre actually had me to sing "Am I Blue" in one episode, which is
remember that.
kind of memorable because it's not something anyone would expect Batman to do. I love to paint. I'm a hobby painter, so I love the visuals of Batman. I find them so stimulating. But you know, as an actor, anything you do informs your work. It's a tired old cliche that you are your instrument, but you really are, and everything about your life feeds your work. Every experience you've had feeds your work. You're constantly trying to get more open emotionally to connect to characters and to use what you've learned in the world. Batman is a very complicated, screwed up guy, and so am I.
That's how you connect.
That was a joke. No, so we all use our complicated lives and play.
Yeah.
You know, you're a sociopathic murderer,
Absolutely.
so you're great with the Joker.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, I can see.
Can I see you downstairs real quick?
I think that's a good place to leave off so that I don't get stabbed on camera.
And
That'd
he
be
was
good.
never seen again.
this is the last interview I will ever do. for CBR.
But what a way to go out,
I
you
know,
know.
right? Get murdered by the Joker.
Sure.
There are worse ways to go.
Sure.
But that seems like a really good place to wrap up. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. It's been
Sure,
a pleasure
it's
talking
been
to you. I
fun.
feel like
Thanks
we
for having
could
us.
go on for hours, seriously.
Great.
I agree.
But they're Kevin Conroy, Troy Baker. I'm Steve Sunu, and this is CBR TV.